Mr. Buczkowski.
Here.
Mr. Carley.
Here.
Mrs. Clinton.
Here.
Mrs. Horta.
Here.
Mr. Ross. Here. Ryan Graham is here. We do have a quorum. We'll proceed forward with our agenda this evening. Board, do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as distributed by unanimous consent, and that will lead us into our citizen comments pertaining to agenda items. We have a few tonight, so I will start at the top. First, we will have Mr. Tim Geithner. And just a reminder that we ask that you try to keep this at 3 minutes or less.
Thank you. I'm Tim Geithner. I'm also board president for Liberty Tree Academy, and I just wanted to come tonight. I've been here before this board specifically for an agenda item that you guys will be discussing and taking action on this evening, which is specifically to parental rights and, of course, student privacy. I want to commend you guys for everything that you have done over the past several months. You have done this in a very transparent and welcoming process that has sought feedback from the entire community, and that's remarkable. You've crafted policy, you've stood by your principles, and I think that's commendable, especially in today's time. Doing hard policy can be difficult, but you guys have been incredibly courageous. You've charted a path and you've led, and you've made it easy for schools like Liberty Tree Academy to follow. We're having similar conversations on the policy that you guys will be adopting tonight, hopefully. And so we're not far behind you. So thank you for what you're doing. It takes courage, and it's visible, and it's seen, and it's welcome. Thank you.
Sir, the next individual on the public comment would be Tony McKenzie.
Evening to all my neighbors and the board members. Forgive me, I'm going to read from my notes to make sure I stay under the 3 minutes and no flying squirrels to distract me. Again, my name's Tony McKenzie. My kids went to MA. My wife's a teacher at MA. I'm a teacher at MA. I want to take this opportunity to share some thoughts on your policies that you'll be voting on tonight, I hope. I will start by saying thank you to the board members for serving. The heart that resides in us has a limited number of heartbeats, and only God knows that number. So when you serve, you are trading these valuable heartbeats for a reason, an important cause. And I believe that you are sacrificing this valuable time on earth for our children. And with all sincerity and appreciation, thank you for your service. Now on the subject of our kids. I don't remember the government sharing in my wife's birth pains. I didn't see them take a shift when these kids weren't sleeping or were sick, hungry, sad, hurting, needing hugs or love. Not even some cash from the government. They like to take it. So these are our kids, our responsibilities. We raise them, we love them, we care for them, and we should fight to protect them. The rights given to us did not come from this government, it came from God. It is true that we are to follow rules and laws. However, when the rules and the laws counter against the Word of God, then we are to put on His armor and shine our lights to push back that darkness. Don't let politics separate us or to use us against each other. Please stand firm on what is right. And I'm talking about what is right by God and His Word. It may be a hard road in stormy weather, but we are not alone. I would like to end my thoughts with that I hope will remind you of our responsibility in this fight and to give you encouragement as we travel this road together. In Matthew 18, and calling him a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, "Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. And I like to emphasize this part. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Again, these are our kids, our responsibilities. So when it gets stormy, let us be reminded of 2 Timothy 1. For God had not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. Because greater is he that is in us than he that is in this world. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, sir. Next up, we have Amy McKenzie.
I remember just a few years ago during COVID when a group of MA parents, myself included, questioned the Colorado mask mandate. The part that stood out in particular to me was under one section stating individuals who could not medically tolerate a facial covering were exempt. I want to thank the past MA board members and a few current board members who worked together with parents on this issue to question the health department in a meeting leading to MA's acceptance of parent-written mask exemption forms. Tolerate was the main word that stuck out. The Oxford Language Dictionary defines tolerate as allowing the existence, occurrence, or practice of something one does not necessarily like or agree with without interference. Well, many parents showed up back in June recently to support MA's proposed parental rights policy, but I was surprised to hear some hesitation with that policy at a recent board meeting. When you look back years from now, will you tell your kids and grandkids that you simply tolerated this issue, or will you tell them you did all you could to join parents in doing right by the kids? May God bless everyone in this room and help us have the strength to be the salt and the light. In Jesus' name, amen.
Ma'am, next we have Christy Davis.
Good evening. My name is Christy Davis, and I'm a very involved parent of 2 students at MA and the chapter chair of Moms for Liberty in El Paso County. I would like to start off tonight by thanking the board for introducing the parental rights policy. The policy is needed in all schools to safeguard parental rights. Parents are the sole decision makers for their children, whether they are at school or home. The very first decision a parent makes is what and how they are going to name their child. We provide our baby with a name that has meaning to us. Allowing a school to change that name without involving parents is violating our trust and damaging our family unit. I appreciate Monument Academy's decision to bring both parents in to make important decisions on name, gender, or pronoun changes at school. Parents have a right to know what their child is being referred to outside of their home. A biological male in an enclosed space with a biological female and competing in sports is a huge safety risk. Physical safety needs to take precedence over emotions and feelings. If I feel like I am a lion, are you going to put me in a cage with lions? No, because I could be injured or killed by the lion. So why would you put a strong biological male into contact sports with a biological female? Women and girls are being physically harmed by these decisions. If the physical characteristics of students differ from that of their peers and children are going to be exposed to sexual organs of the opposite biological sex, and they should not be together in a private space. This is a safety risk, and we need to protect the innocence of our young children. Why should the majority of the student body have their feelings and safety put in jeopardy? Why should the majority of the student body be told if they feel uncomfortable, they can use the individual stalls in teachers' restrooms? I would like to thank the board for providing this option to the extreme minority and encouraging them to use this. Parents, you have a fundamental right under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to direct the upbringing, care, and control of your children. In Parham versus JR, it includes involvement in their children's medical and personal decisions, as most children, even in adolescence, simply are not able to make sound judgments concerning many decisions, including their need for medical care or treatment. Because gender transition profoundly affects a child's mental, emotional, and physical development, involvement in that process is well within the scope of parents' fundamental rights. Any school that would seek to strip a parent of these rights shouldn't have students enrolled in their care. Hiding information from parents is damaging and isolates the child from the people who care about them the most, their family. The school withholding information from parents is not only immoral, but also unconstitutional. Depriving a parent of these rights with no due process and allowing the school to assert themselves in the role of the parent gives the school the boundless discretion to determine whether a parent is fit to make that decision or not. How would a school make this determination? Will there be an appeal, a notice, a process? When parents are denied input into the extremely permanent and damaging consequences of a child's gender transition, mental welfare, or what their child is being referred to at school, that is a direct infringement on a parent's fundamental rights under due process and is unconstitutional. Monument Academy, I thank you for standing with parents and putting student safety and security above gender ideologies that violate the privacy of others. I thank you for providing options to families that will align with their child's beliefs, but ensuring that the family is involved in the decision instead of hiding it from them. Please vote in favor of this policy and protect our children and parental rights. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Nate Brady.
Good evening. My name is Nate Brady. I'm the father of 3 Monument Academy students. First, I want to thank the board for introducing a policy that protects parental rights and honors the parent-child relationship above all others. Policies that move children away from and encourage keeping secrets from parents can easily become destructive. And secondly, supporting the protection of privacy for all students is paramount. Thank you for not only communicating and deferring to parents when my own child may be directly struggling, but also when another child's struggle may indirectly affect my child so that I can help them better navigate a sensitive or challenging situation. I want to give my support for the draft policy on parental rights at Monument Academy that prioritizes parental involvement in all decisions. Thank you for standing up for our students.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Mark McWilliams.
So I'm not going to pick up the microphone because every time I do that, I go off a script and I say things that everybody laughs about and then I regret later. Board, thank you for all the things you guys are doing with this. I've been in your shoes, but nowhere near as difficult of a decision as you guys are working on right now, and the things you're facing right now are far beyond any of the struggles we dealt with years ago, including building this wonderful school. My wife asked me to tone this down, so I'm going to do my best and read from it and tweak a little as we go. It's been stated and made abundantly clear repeatedly that all children need to be loved, cared for, protected. And in addition, I'm going to say any parent that's going through a difficult time like what we're discussing here right now, they need our prayers, our support, our encouragement, and our love. But there were 2 items that were absolutely on every parent's mind here last June 2023 when we were all in this building, this room. And there were 2 items that we all talked about, and last I checked, it was standing room only, well over 220 parents. Those 2 questions are, how are you going to protect our children from the possible, and by recent evidence in multiple places here in America, somewhat likely actions of children who are going through a very complex and difficult time? How do we make sure that our little girls are not subjected to inappropriate things in the bathroom? One particular activist right here on this property commented directly to me on that day that boys have been doing bad things in bathrooms for many, many years. You're right. That's true. And we disciplined them for it. And they learned from the experience. Well, in this case, the state is requiring us to invite boys into the girls' restrooms, and we're not allowed to discipline. In fact, we're supposed to celebrate it. Surely, we can come up with a common sense and balanced rule to manage and protect the safety of both children. I really believe the proposal that you're working on right now is a very good step toward that. and goes a long way towards some common sense rules to help protect our children. Now, the second thing is, which I've heard already several times, how can we make sure that the parents of children are not the last ones to know about significant emotional struggles with their child? How do we protect that? How do we make sure of that? And the question is for you, are you, the board, going to make a policy for our school and the staff at this school that we trust and love dearly and think nothing but the world of? However, it only takes one staff member to, well-intentioned, subvert parental rights. And your policy is what's designed to stand in that gap. Parents want to know that our obligation for and to care for and raise our children is not ever secondary to the whims or agenda of another well-meaning adult. I believe this policy helps that. Now, it's important to note in this particular case that you cannot gift a right without taking it from someone else. You can't give a child a right without taking that right from a parent, in this case. And there are those who state that the right of a child supersedes that of a parent's right to care and protect for that child, and we're talking about children that still believe in the tooth fairy being given the right to decide their future gender for the rest of their lives, or even for this year or next month. But we all know that that child is not capable of making such a tremendous decision. And there are well-meaning activists that believe that they know better than that parent. And that is unacceptable. These two key points are why those 220 parents gathered here in this gym back in June of 2023. And 8 months ago, we implored you to act on our behalf. We voted you in place here to act on our behalf, to protect our rights and protect our children. Now, everybody else has been real positive and sweet, and I'll be a little bit nasty. You've had 8 months. You've had 8 months to solicit input, discuss it as a board, and seek legal counsel. There is no perfect policy. Having sat in your chair, there is no perfect policy. But inaction is imperfect. There will be a time when it's too late, and when that time happens and it's already done, we'll all regret that we continue to debate it. It's time to get this done now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, that completes our public comment for this evening on agenda-related items. The next item on our agenda is going to be our school spotlight, and we'll go ahead and yield to Mr. Carley for this.
All right, so School Spotlight is something that we like to do monthly. We like to highlight a member of our community, whether it's a staff member, a parent, or in this case, a phenomenal student. So very, very excited to present this here tonight. As some of you guys know from our last meeting, we had MA middle schooler Addison Mahalik competed in the USTF National Junior Olympic Cross Country Championship in Louisville, Kentucky on December 9th. Out of 410 athletes in her age group, Addison placed 5th in the nation and was an All-American. She was also just named the 2023 USA TF 11 to 12 Girls Cross Country Athlete of the Year, where she will attend a banquet this coming January. In a little bit, we actually had Addison's coach write a nice sentiment about her as well. So Addison is making waves with her incredible performances during this year's cross-country season. At every CCAL meet this fall, she took first place and helped our MA cross-country team secure a CCAL championship win. She then went on to Colorado State Middle School Championships in Denver, taking second place among hundreds of Colorado's best. Too close out of the 7th grade cross-country season, she raced at the USATF Junior Olympic Cross Country Championship in Kentucky and took 5th place overall, running a 3K in 10 minutes and 51 seconds. That's incredible. makes me feel bad about myself. Fifth in the nation. So unsurprisingly, USTF Colorado has noticed her achievements, and she has recently celebrated and awarded the USATF Colorado Youth Cross Country 11 and 12-year-olds Athlete of the Year. Her talent is inspiring, and her outstanding character in and out of the running shoes make her 100% deserving of this high level of recognition. We are so proud of Addie and cannot wait to see her crush the upcoming track and field season. Chrissy Steger.
Thank you, Mr. Carlin. Congratulations to you, Ms. Addison. It will lead us on to our consent agenda board. The minutes from the January 11th and January 31st meetings have been distributed to you electronically. Are there any corrections or requests for the minutes to be read aloud? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as distributed by unanimous consent. That will lead us into our reports of administration and committees. Tonight, we're going to start with the executive director report. Mrs. McClellan is out of town at this time, so I'm just going to go ahead and read her report to the community, and then we'll move on to our CFO report. So this is from Mrs. McClellan. Good evening, Monument Academy Board and community. Due to my absence tonight, the following is a summary to share as my executive director's report. As we continue through this past month, I am pleased to provide you with an update on our recent strategic initiatives and ongoing efforts to ensure the success of our organization. Our strategic planning efforts are underway, focusing on identifying and leveraging opportunities to enhance our organization's impact. Our teams have refined our strategic priorities, which align with our strategic plan objectives through collaborative sessions with key stakeholders. Many of the tasks associated with our priorities are already being implemented and tracked through our teams in our RACI model. The strategic planning process guides our decision-making to align with our long-term goals and better position ourselves for sustained success. Developing our budget for the 24-25 school year is a refined and intentional process, considering both short-term needs and long-term objectives. We are looking at the prioritized resource allocation to support key initiatives, ensuring fiscal responsibility while maximizing our growth and program excellence potential. We are committed to financial sustainability and efficient use of resources while caring for our staff and students. This week, my leadership team met to prepare a presentation for the Blue and Gold team, which includes our administrators. The meeting with the Blue and Gold team will be the first meeting to collaborate on drafting the new school year's budget. We have been seeking a new executive director to ensure a smooth leadership transition. I'm impressed by the number of applicants we have received in such a short time, which speaks volumes about the excellent community of Monument Academy. After the board chooses the new executive director, we will continue with our succession planning to support a seamless onboarding process for the new individual prioritized by the board of directors. The homeschool program presented tonight will speak to the hard work and dedication to our academic offerings and how we are committed to its innovative approaches and curriculum and program enhancements to meet the evolving needs of the homeschooling families. This program's success will be a testament to our dedication to providing flexible and high-quality educational options and choices to our community and parents. As we anticipate an interesting legislative session, we are proactively working to ensure the protection of charter schools and support for parent choice. The advocacy efforts I am working on include engagement with policymakers, community outreach, and collaboration with like-minded organizations. I am closely monitoring legislative developments and am prepared to respond strategically to any potential challenges. As I come to a close, I would like to express my gratitude to our committed team and the board's support. With your help, we will continue to achieve academic excellence and see further growth and development in our organization. I'm eager to continue working alongside you as we navigate these strategic initiatives together. As always, I am committed to our mission at Monument Academy and partnership. Kim McClellan, Executive Director. Board, the next item on the agenda will be our CFO report. I'll turn this over to Mr. Gustafson.
Thank you. Thank you, President Graham. Board members, included in your board packet, we have the December quarterly and monthly financial statements As a reminder, we're required to prepare quarterly financial statements for all of our bond compliance reporting and the bond agencies. We prepare monthlies because they provide more meaningful and accurate, timely information for us to help manage the resources of our school. I'm just going to talk about the monthlies. They both have the same data, just one's monthly and one's quarterly. The monthlies are definitely more pertinent to what we're doing. If you look at the December monthly financial statements, as of December 31, halfway through the year, we have an excess of expenditures over revenue of $350,000. I don't like to really call that a loss. We have that for a variety of reasons. One, our major fundraising activities happen in the spring, and two, the state and Lewis Palmer School District flow through our mill levy override funds in the spring along with the property tax collection cycle. So a lot of our revenue comes in later in the year, not early in the year, that is affecting that. But we still need to be cautious about that. Our preschool fund has a surplus of $58,000. The Building Corp., which is our 2014 bonds for the West Campus, is right now has a negative balance of $199,000, but we've already paid the principal on the bonds in 6 months of the interest, so in accordance with the bond's debt service schedule. So we're actually ahead of the game on that. And then the Foundation Fund, which has the 2019 bonds on this campus, is $177,000 to the good, revenues exceeding expenditures, but we still owe our principal payment and 6 months of interest on those bonds. And the activity funds have a net income of $36,000 for the year, so revenues are exceeding expenditures. Our cash and investment balances remain strong. In the general fund, we have $4.1 million. We are invested in accordance with local government investment pools. In accordance with state statutes, we're earning about 5.5% on those funds and doing quite well from interest. We have about $200,000 in the preschool fund, $1.4 million in the Building Corp. trustee accounts, $1.3 million in the foundation trustee accounts, and $150,000 in the student activity funds. So all in all, we're doing well. We are a little bit behind at this point in the year. You should know that so Lewis Palmer chews up our funding based on enrollment in January. That happened, and because we didn't hit our enrollment projection, we budgeted more kids than we actually got. Although our enrollment is almost flat, we budgeted a little bit more. We did take a ding in January in terms of them chewing that up retroactively from July through December. That's all been done now. The good news is I was planning on that all along, so I was making sure that we weren't overstating our revenues throughout the year because I didn't want to have a big crash in January, so I don't expect that. But I am anxious to see the January financial statements. We're very close to completing those. Laura and I finalized a lot of the accounting on that today, and we just have to put together the financial statements. The books are in balance for January, and now we have to just put together financial statements, which we'll have in the board packet for next month. So I'm anxious to see, now that that true-up is done, how we look. One other point about revenues in arrears, we don't get our special ed funds until late in the school year. That's another $300,000. So if you take into account the fundraising, the special ed money, and the mill levy override money, we would probably have a surplus of revenue over expenditures. It's just the timing of the revenue cycle for our revenues that come in. So please don't worry, we're in good shape, we're doing well. Other items I wanted to cover real quickly. We were in the process of applying for the employee retention tax credit with the IRS. It's taken a tremendous amount of work and effort on our part. The IRS suspended taking those applications in December as a result of all the, they call them the credit mills, where these fraudulent players submit bogus applications for refunds on these kinds of credits. So the IRS suspended taking these applications. We were in limbo. We weren't quite done with our application. We were just waiting. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of January, the IRS said, we're going to take those applications until January 31st, and then we're shutting down. The original deadline was September 30th. So they moved up the deadline by 8 months. They only gave us 2 weeks to finalize our application. And as you know, I was on vacation. But we were able to scramble and get those applications submitted on time the day before the deadline, and we submitted for a total refund of $1.3 million of payroll taxes. As a reminder, the employee retention tax credit was for those businesses that kept all of their employees on the payroll during COVID, which we did. And as a nonprofit and a government, we're a little bit in limbo in terms of who we are, but we know that Cesar Chavez Charter School applied and got those funds about a year ago, and so I'm very optimistic that we will be able to be successful in that. The attorneys, we had a CPA and an attorney submit our applications for us, have advised us in the event that we're approved and in the event that we'll get funding, which would happen sometime around the summer of '24. They recommend that we sit on that money, invest it, and wait to see if we're audited or what will happen. That'll be hard to do. We'll see if we can actually manage that, but hopefully this will all work out and we'll get this influx of cash, which would be a real lifesaver for Monument Academy, a real game changer. Another thing is I recently discovered, because I work part-time at CDE, as you know, that we still have approximately $180,000 of unsent startup grant money related to this campus. And so we have reached out to the Colorado Department of Education, which is me changing one hat to the other hat, and said, hey, please give us our grant application. I need to know, what did we submit for a budget? What have we already been reimbursed for? What are we eligible for, so we can receive those additional funds? All those funds would be at this campus, because that's for the startup of this school. So disappointed that I wasn't aware of that. I was lucky that a colleague at CDE reached out and said, hey, don't you work a little bit with Monument Academy? You need to know you got some money sitting here just waiting. So we'll go after that and get that done and get that finalized. Last thing, I have two more things I just wanted to share with the board on the budget development cycle. We've actually already started on building our budget for next year. We had a preliminary meeting with the leadership team. I'd like the board to know that in April board meeting, we will have the preliminary budget assumptions, which help you see what the picture looks like in a fairly short Reader's Digest version. In May, we will have the complete proposed budget, and then in June, after we have a school finance act and all of our funding is locked in, the board will need to adopt the proposed budget and make that the adopted budget. So it'll be April, May, and June that we'll get that done. I actually meet with the Blue and Gold team next week to start gathering their input. I've developed a form this year to have principals and department heads submit for their requests. I just want to caution those that are here, that's not open call for money. Funds are still tight, but we know that this was a tight year and we want to give schools and departments a chance to submit for things. It's still going to be tight, but I think we can work through that. And then finally, I just wanted to let you know about the Interim School Finance Committee in the legislature. The Interim School Finance Committee just recently completed their report. You should know that this is about the 12th Interim School Finance Committee in the last 20 years. I personally have served on 3 of those committees. This one is mostly all legislators. Sometimes they have legislators, sometimes they have practitioners from the field like myself. And I have a little bit of disappointing news that came out of that. In that report, while the committee did recommend adequate funding for schools across the state of Colorado, they are recommending changes in the formula that are based on a redistribution of funding based on socioeconomics. And you can imagine how that kind of fits the politics of what's going on in Denver. There are 16 out of 178 school districts that lose funding in that proposal. 3 of those districts include Douglas County, Academy District 20, and Lewis Palmer 38. So if that were to happen, our funding could actually go down. So I would encourage you to contact your legislators. All kids deserve fair and adequate resources. We don't want to go through that. Our friends in this situation are Academy and Douglas County. Douglas County is very, very large, $700 million budget approximately. They lose $26 million in the proposal. So they will be very active at the Capitol, and we need to partner with them in that, along with all of our other charter school colleagues. And just so that, you know, I'm not all doom and gloom, you know, my nickname at D11 was Dr. Doom. I served on 3, there's 12 in the last 20 years. Of all those interim school finance committee, there's only been a couple of minor tweaks. Almost always, they don't get implemented because it becomes a rearranging of the deck chairs on the Titanic, and there's winners and losers, and nobody likes to see that. So hopefully that won't come to fruition. We've never had a major significant change. The current School Finance Act that we're working on is from 1994. It's 30 years old, and there's only been a few tweaks to that model in the last 30 years. So don't panic. I think we'll be okay, but we don't want to sit on our hands. We want to be active. We want to let people in Denver know that that's not right. We can't afford to take that. Just one other thing to make alleviate some concern. There is a proposal that maybe they would hold those districts harmless so that they don't take a reduction of funding. We don't know if that means hold them harmless at 23-24 levels or hold them harmless at the governor's proposed increase for 24-25. So we would have to wait and see the school finance to see how that would play out. The likelihood of that happening, though, it costs the state $63 million, and they might not do it. So with that, that's the status of our financial operations. We continue to make great progress on things. I appreciate my finance team and the HR team that I work so closely with. We did go live with our first payroll with our outsourced payroll company. It went fantastic. We got our W-2s out, our 1099s out, and we're getting better and better at all those processes. So I would be glad to take any questions from the board.
Glenn, what is the figure that potentially D38 is looking at?
We don't know yet. The number for D38 is, I do know that number, I apologize. The number for D38 as a whole is approximately $3 million. I don't know what that means in terms of the size of their budget. I'm not familiar enough with their budget. Is that, 10%? I don't know quite what that means, but it's $3 million. They're not that big a district compared to Douglas County with 50,000 kids. So, it's significant.
Thank you, Glenn. I've got a couple of questions. I might have missed it when you were talking quickly about the ERTC credit, but in which fiscal year do you think that we would receive and book those funds?
Good question. So it's going to happen right around June. So it could go either way. It could be an accrual. Remember, we're on an accrual basis, which means when we earned it as opposed to received it. If we were notified that we were accepted, we would accrue those towards fiscal year 23-24, but we have to know that we've been officially accepted by the IRS in order to do that. Otherwise, it'll probably be 24-25. It's going to happen right around that time. You never know with the IRS.
Okay, thank you. So we still need IRS approval, and then we would know whether it impacts this fiscal year or next fiscal year.
Correct. We need IRS approval and acceptance of our application. Then we need checks where they actually give us the money. And then we need to wait to see, because they've already said that they're going to be auditing many of the organizations that have submitted. So we got kind of a 3-step process.
Excellent, thank you. One other question, and that's, you mentioned the fundraising that we had in the budget, and could you please refresh my memory on that? I believe that the fundraising sort of amount that we used to balance the budget was approximately $200,000.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you, Glenn.
Quick question.
Hi.
Hi. You mentioned money that is sitting at the CDE for us.
Yes,
How much?
approximately $180,000.
And that's a guarantee to us, or there are?
We have already been awarded, when you, long before my time, decided to build this campus, there is a specific state grant for charter school startup operations. Monument Academy applied for and was awarded that grant. They actually submitted for some reimbursement way back when. Of course, COVID happened in there, you had some turnover with your CFO, and then everything came to a stop. I was not aware. I thought, geez, those funds must have been spent a long time ago. You know, we've been up and running in this building quite a while. And then one of my colleagues reached out and said, no, you still have $180,000 sitting there in our name.
Fantastic.
Now we have to come up with legitimate qualifying expenditures to get that money back. They have to be related to the startup. So it's things like furniture, technology, things that we've spent to start up the school.
Board, any further questions? Glenn, thank you. I appreciate it. I know you put in a lot of time on that ERTC, so fingers crossed that that comes through. And
You know, I'm so thank you for that comment, and thank you. A lot of people played a part in that, pulling all those reports and payroll documents and things, and Krista and her team in HR were really helpful with that. And, you know, in a way, it was a good thing, because we were in limbo waiting for the IRS to reopen the window. So, yeah, we had to scramble, but now our application is submitted and we're in the pipeline. So, in the end, I think it worked out well.
excellent. All right, Board, lead us into our board committee reports. I'll start with Highway 105. Construction's underway. We are progressing. Everything should be completed this summer for the road in front of the school. Those of you that are not familiar, the road in front of MA West, where they're currently building that wall, if you've been over there for a pickup and drop off, there's going to be a road that's going to connect to the top of the S-curve. That essentially is going to create a loop in front of the school, and then of course we already have the loop that comes in behind the school. So fall of next year, the intent is that will be opened up and we will be utilizing both loops. We will still be using Knollwood as our primary ingress egress, and the church access will remain closed, and that will be an emergency ingress egress only. But that is the update right now on the Highway 105 stuff. So thank you to our families that are bearing with us. Thank you for your patience on this. We will get through this, and there is light at the end of this tunnel for us. Next up, we have our curriculum report, and I will turn this to you, Ms. Belisle.
Thank you. The committee met on February 1st. We discussed the adoption of the new math curriculum for West Campus. Mrs. Leone is here tonight and will be presenting on this later this evening, so I'm not going to get into the weeds on that right now. Also, we began to discuss some challenges and work to be done with the ongoing updates to our core knowledge curriculum. More to come on that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Belisle. That will lead us to SAC West. Mr. Ross.
Yes, sir. Okay, a couple of reports. We met on February 1st, last week. The first feedback that we got, everyone will agree, and Ryan just spoke to, but the car line, we're getting some feedback in the community that the challenges with the car line is potentially taking some students away from our school, and that's not something that we want to see happen. And so just encouragement to continue over-communicating about the future plans of the car line. Some Phase 4 detailed communication could probably be helpful beyond what we're hearing here, maybe Facebook, some videos or something like that, just to encourage people. It's going to get better. And then they also mentioned maybe a public service announcement about how to properly use a roundabout would be helpful information in all seriousness. PTO has some good updates. Penny Wars, second graders won Penny Wars, and the first Penny Wars milestone was reached. While that is over, they're still accepting donations towards the $20,000 goal through Friday, tomorrow. The next milestone is to blue out the school, where all the students would be permitted to wear all blue that day. And they are very close to hitting that milestone, so please turn in your donations to the front desk at the West Campus. PTO did host their KISS, Kids Invite Someone Special dinner catered by Arlene's Beans. Restaurant night last month was at Papa's Restaurant and was held in conjunction with the Dart Wars fundraiser. PTO provided the staff members with a baked potato bar in January, and the third grade family sponsored the Stock the Lounge. The PTO general meeting for January was held at Serrano's, and the next one will be in March, and the official date will be announced soon on Parent Square. In February, Valentine's Gram forms have been sent out to the families to order, and the order window closed on the 7th. There's a Parents' Night Out scheduled on the 10th, hosted by Monuments Best at their location. It will be Valentine's Day themed. Teacher Appreciation Week is coming up the 20th through the 23rd. Please see the flyer in Links News for the details on what will take place each day to bless the staff. And February's restaurant night will be at the ever-popular Arlene's Beans from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on February 27th. That's it.
Thank you, sir. That will lead us into our SAC East report. Mrs. Clinton.
Okay, so this evening I am very happy to read to everybody the SAC East recommendation letter that this came from the mid-year survey results. And Ms. Sellers, thank you for helping guide us and put this together for us. Dear Monument Academy Board of Directors, the East Campus School Accountability Advisory Committee, SAC, recently completed the mid-year survey for middle and high schools, which provides valuable insight into how parents of Monument Academy secondary students experience their children's education. Our committee is pleased to offer recommendations based on our observations of the collected data. Sorry, my accent's coming out. The mid-year survey was open from November 15th through December 1st, 2023, and returned 102 responses. Since the survey asked each household to complete a separate survey for each secondary student in the household, these numbers represent numbers of students about whom responses were given rather than number of respondent households. We appreciate the parents who budgeted time in their schedule to participate. Their feedback is needed and valuable in shaping and strengthening the MA East experience. Survey questions fell under the basic categories of communication, academic progress, whole person development in areas of character, leadership and athletics, atmosphere, and connectedness, as well as parent volunteering. Notable areas of strength that presented in the data are communication between school and families, as well as between students and teachers, opportunities for parents' voices to be heard, academic progress across core classes, students feel safe and connected at school, parent-guardian familiarity with Canvas and Infinite Campus, percentage of responses that noted having volunteered this year at 74%, additional responses noted a desire to volunteer. Notable areas for growth that presented in the data are communication between parents, guardians, and teachers, electives and AP offerings, opportunities to develop as an athlete, opportunities to develop as a leader, students feeling connected to MA East through school spirit and traditions, communication about volunteering needs, opportunities, and how to log hours. Clarifying and open-ended comment opportunities on the survey returned the following majority common themes that are not represented directly in the main survey questions. The need to stabilize teacher positions, especially for some middle school core classes, positivity about Parent Square as a tool to streamline communications between school and parents and guardians, the need to leverage Parent Square fully and train staff and parents to use all its available tools to school and families' best advantage, the need for all secondary teachers to use Canvas the same way, uniformly and consistently across all courses to make it easier for parents and guardians to track their children's grades and work, the need for better direct communication avenues between coaches and parents and guardians, the desire to have our own athletic facilities, and the desire to capitalize and invest more fully in our performing arts programs. In light of the provided data, SAC East offers the MA Board the following recommendations. Continue to focus on attracting and retaining students to increase high school enrollment. Continue to focus on hiring and retention of quality teaching staff to enhance AP and elective course offerings for middle school and high school. Expand administration, staff, and parent-guardian knowledge of how to effectively use all of Parent Square's tools to improve communication and facilitate parents' guardians' knowledge and access to volunteer opportunities for the school. Take steps to assure Canvas is used uniformly and consistently for all secondary courses, and continue to find ways to build school traditions to create a feeling of connectedness to the school and one another among the student body. While there is always room for growth and improvement, the members of SAC East are grateful to work with administrators who are engaged and attentive to input from the MA community and who work tirelessly for the good of our students while placing high value on the role and opinions of MA parents and guardians. It has been our privilege to provide this service to the MA East administration, board, and community in an effort to help MA East continue in its achievement and pursuit of its mission and vision. Respectfully, Shar Sellers, Chairperson, MA SAC East.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Clinton, for reading that off. Next, we have governance. Ms. Soida, Mr. Buczkowski.
No report.
Next, finance, Mr. Buczkowski.
I think I'll actually defer to Craig since he was at the last meeting, but I do have a couple of figures for the board since I was traveling and was not able to attend the last finance meeting. Okay, yeah. Just a couple of numbers for the board. particularly regarding the fundraising that is budgeted. We just heard from Glenn confirming that approximately $200,000 of fundraising has been budgeted for Monument Academy this year. What that means is that we're relying on $200,000 of fundraising from you, the community, in order to balance our budget. Okay, so that is there to balance the budget. The last number I had, which was in early January, we were at about 41,000 received of the 200,000 budgeted. We still have, several events to go, but I do want to point out to both the board and to our community that we're about $160,000 behind for fundraising. And those are the only other numbers I have for Finance Committee.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have Buildings and Facilities. I have no report. Ms. Horta, do you?
No report.
RDC, Ms. Clinton, Mr. Carley.
The RDC met on January 19th. We discussed development of the marketing concepts for corporate sponsorships and different revenue sourcing that we have with using our facilities. So look for announcements to come about camps that will be held at our school. Those camps, not only is that convenient to have your children attend the camp at Monument Academy's campus, but it also will have a benefit to the school as well. Then the gala is coming up April 19th. So as Mr. Bichkowski was talking about, that is our largest fundraiser for the year. If you haven't bought your tickets yet, I would encourage you to do so because we do have a room cap. And in every 1MA newsletter that's coming out, towards the bottom of it is the QR code for that. And if you go in either of the offices here, you'll see the advertising for that as well. And then we'll have Grandparents' Day coming up and some other activities. And I will need to confirm for you, Joe, but I do believe that number had gone up. I don't want to put one out publicly without confirming it, but I do think we have a slightly higher number, but we still have a long ways to go to reach that balanced budget number with our fundraising. So we look forward to partnering with everybody on that and hopefully seeing everyone at the gala on April 19th as well.
Thank you very much. Last on the committee reports will be the HR Subcommittee Board. Tonight in discussion action, we will discuss the Monument Academy Executive Director hiring timeline. I know we had a lengthy discussion at our last meeting on this, but tonight we'll be proposing that to the board for adoption. That will complete our committee reports and lead us into our board discussion action. The first thing on the agenda tonight will be our academic dashboard presentation with Jennifer Strawbridge of Analytical Discoveries.
And the slides that she will be speaking to were included in the agenda packet that went publicly. So if you guys want to pull out your phones and be following along that way, the slides are in there.
Thank you, Mrs. Clinton. Is this on? Yes? I think so. So tonight we'll be looking at the Q2 dashboard. There is an update on some of the performance data that's occurred since we last saw each other, including the NWA mid-year and DIBELS mid-year assessments and behavior and the attendance data. We'll also be looking at some of the updates that Ms. McClelland provided during her executive director report for the strategic plan. So as always, I like to start the dashboard with the mission statement to recenter us on the reason that we have created this dashboard, to really monitor how well the school is doing with upkeeping these key components of the mission around academic excellence, respect, and responsibility. This first section is regarding the DIBELS results, and I encourage you to, when looking at these results, it's always so hard when I don't have a mouse to draw where I want you to look. But when you look at that midline between the green and yellow on those bars, that's going to be an indication of anything below that midline is going to be students that are performing below grade level, and above that midline is students who are performing at or above grade level. And so if you can follow that midline from the beginning of the year data to the middle of the year data, you're wanting to have that line go down, which would be an indication that the percent of students who are performing below grade level is shrinking, right? And so we want to see that continually go down as we progress through the school year. This first slide is showing you kindergarten, first and second grade. Again, the DIBELS assessment assesses reading. The next slide is looking at the upper elementary for third, fourth, and fifth grade. Does anyone have any questions about DIBELS results? No, move on. Okay. This next section is looking at academic achievement specifically for the NWA MAP results. The NWA MAP assessment is measuring student performance in reading, mathematics, language usage, which is primarily grammar and sentence structure, and also science. This first slide is looking at reading, and I've added a component to this slide to indicate the school level goals that were set by the leadership team. That blue dashed line at the bottom is where we want to get all of those green dashed lines to, that point, right? To give you that frame. And we really, that is the 2024-25 target. And you'll start to see that as we move through the school year and go into next year, we're hoping to see those green bars move right in with that blue dashed line. Does anyone have any questions about how to interpret that component? Okay, great. So here, this is a little bit different than the DIBELS data because we're looking at quintiles, so it's based on 20 percentile ranges instead of, the DIBELS data is in quartiles, right, the 25 percentile ranges. And so there are 5 sections. And so it's not a really, there's not that clear-cut point of looking at the midline between the green and the yellow. So that's why I've added this dashed green bar on each of them to give you an indication of the percentages of students who are performing below grade level. And you can take that green dashed bar and look over to the y-axis to get the percentage that are performing below grade level. So that first slide is reading. And the second one is mathematics. Again, mathematics is an area that the entire country is having a hard time recovering from since COVID. I think Monument Academy is doing all the right work in the strategic plan and the information that we developed as a leadership team with the Unified Improvement Plan. And we're starting to see improvements in the percentage of students who are getting back to grade level performance after COVID. And so that's really an incredible, some incredible work that's occurring at the school. The next slide is language usage. Anyone have any questions about how to interpret this academic achievement? Remembering academic achievement is really looking at grade level performance. Okay. The next section is academic growth. This first set of slides is looking at the students' ability to meet their growth targets. And this is a new presentation of data for Monument Academy. And so I'm going to take a little bit to explain what it's telling us. If you'll notice, there's dark blue and light blue components to each grade levels bar. The dark blue indicates the percent of students who are meeting or exceeding their growth targets from fall to winter. The light blue indicates the percent of students who did not meet their growth target from fall to winter, but scored within a standard error range. So there's error inherent in every assessment because a student, say there's 5 questions that test one concept, a student could get 3 of those questions correct and 2 incorrect, right, for some reason or another. And so then it introduces a little bit of error to kind of like, we think they know it, but maybe they don't, right? And so that is taken into consideration. There's always a range of what that student's score should be when they take it in the winter after the fall assessment. And so what educators like to call those kids is really that they're on the bubble, right? They're right there, they're really close to making the amount of growth that they need to, but not quite. They might have missed a few questions. And so really making sure that educators can look into who are the students who are in this light blue area and target their learning gaps and helping them is really informative for teachers at the school. And so that is going to be new information. It's information that's always been accessible to the students, to the teachers and to the principals, but now they'll have direct information that they can focus on. Does anyone have any questions about this new? So those are students who did not meet their growth, so that you mean the white that continues out to the 100 line, right? Those are the students who did not meet their growth target and were not within the standard error range. What I like to think about with the full extent of the bar is kind of the school's potential for the school year, right? And granted, you're obviously going to be working with those students who are not represented in either the light blue or the dark blue, right? But this is kind of like, these are students who are really close, and so it would be really easy to help those students get over the mark. Great question, thank you. Please. I haven't looked at whether there was a difference in scores based on testing time period, but I think that there was some decision making about when they were going to test. My advice was to wait until after Christmas break, but I know that there was some concern about the amount of, I think that access testing was also occurring in January for English language learners. And so managing that, it felt like it would make more sense before the break. I think sometimes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if that had any effect at all or not, but that might be something. It's interesting. This is somewhat relevant, but there is data to show that when students take an assessment in the morning versus the afternoon, they score higher. And just the after lunch slump, right? I don't think any of us perform as well in the afternoon, but that is something that's been looked at. But I can definitely look and see if there's a significant difference between. It would be around growth targets. So yeah, great question, thank you. So reading, mathematics, and language usage are all represented here. I thought I was really impressed to see the third grade data for mathematics. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but almost 95% of the third graders meeting growth targets in mathematics. So that was fantastic to see. So awesome job, third grade team. This next set of charts is around median conditional growth percentile. And if you remember from previous presentations of this data, median conditional growth percentile is looking at how Monument Academy students grow as compared to the national average or the national medians. And so what we're doing is we're taking individual student growth percentiles and finding the median at this school, and those are the numbers that you're seeing by grade level. Student growth percentiles are established by looking at, say we have a Monument Academy fifth grader who scored a 205 on the NWA MAP assessment in the fall. And then we're gonna look at all other fifth graders across the country who took the NWA MAP assessment and also scored a 205 and see how they grew from fall to winter. And we're gonna compare our Monument Academy student to that growth. So it might have been as much as maybe some students across the country dropped 10 points and other students across the country gained 25 points, right? And we'll say our Monument Academy student gained 4 points. So where does that, on a scale of 1 to 99, the bottom being associated with the drop in 10, the first percentile, and the gain in 25 points being at the 99th percentile, where does a 4 fall in that range? And that is that student's growth percentile. We take all the students in the grade level for that subject area, line them up in order, and take the middle score. Median is less susceptible to skew than average, right? The average will move a lot more if there are a lot of low or high scores. And so median gives us a better picture of where our students are performing and what we can do to improve and learn from that information. I've also laid on the cut points for the state assessment as the accountability system that the state uses for the state assessment and growth. And you'll see there are bars, yellow, green, and blue, that are aligned with approaching, meets, and exceeds state expectations. This is not developed or used for NWA MAP. However, the NWA MAP assessment is a very highly correlated assessment with the state assessment and gives us a good picture. That's why it's so valuable to the school to utilize this interim assessment, because it helps us see on a more regular basis how our students are progressing. And so what we'll see here is that, and I've seen at previous schools that I've worked with, it's just typically will fall, these growth percentiles will fall within maybe 2 to 5 points of where you'll see your state assessment growth scores. And so it's a really good indicator of where we might end up in the spring. And I will also tell you, though, that the winter assessment, depending on when students are assessed, is and the pacing of the curriculum is sometimes a little bit lower than what we would see when we get to the spring assessment, because then the students have had time to acquire all of that knowledge. So I would take winter with a grain of salt, is what I would like to say. And despite that, though, I would like to bring to your attention the kindergarten growth, which was exceptional in reading, and also the third grade growth in mathematics. So really incredible when you have a group of students performing at or above the 65th percentile. It's showing that really incredible growth is occurring. So that was great to see. The next slide you'll see is language usage and also science.
I have a quick question.
Please.
Are there certain grades that you expect to see growth in more than others? I'm thinking of developmental milestones or kids take a jump in reading in kindergarten. I don't know. I'm asking are there any statistics that show certain grades that really kids see a lot of growth?
That's a great question. It was so weird because the speaker is like here, and I was like, who's behind me? I'm so sorry. And I was like looking back. What I will say is that you may see that difference based on developmental milestones in children in the academic achievement data, right? But the academic growth data, because it's based on a national comparison, you would anticipate that students at a similar age band or grade level would be growing in a similar fashion based on development. And so I wouldn't anticipate that we would see differences in grade level growth based on their grade. I will tell you that when you're looking at students, having a certain percentage of students performing below grade level, like we saw in the academic achievement charts, in order to catch those students up, we're going to need to see growth percentiles that are significantly above the 50th percentile. The 50th percentile typically represents a year's growth in a year's time. And if you have, as you can probably guess, if you have students performing below grade level, a year's growth in a year's time is not going to get them where they need to be in order to keep up. And so that is something that I'm hoping to see in these results as we move through this strategic plan and the unified improvement plan that we just created and start to see that those growth percentiles improve. Mm-hmm. The next section is our high school state assessment results. So we're looking at well, not state, right? What would you refer to it as, David? National assessment results. The PSAT 8-9 and the NMSQT. I have to find that on that slide in case anyone's wondering what that acronym means. But this is the Monument Academy High School comparison to district performance on these two assessments. The students took this assessment in the fall, which is something that David has implemented and is a new practice for the high school and is giving them some really valuable information to work with over the course of the school year. Does anyone have any questions about the high school assessments? Okay. Behavior. I know that this is not your favorite chart. However, it's because we don't have any data reportable for the elementary and the high school because it is less than 16 students being represented, and so we want to make sure that student privacy is enacted in these dashboards. And so you'll only see data for the middle school. Again, this is an indication that there's a very low behavior rate at Monument Academy, and so not having a lot of information in this chart is actually a really good thing. And so that is the information that we can glean from this chart. The next section is attendance. It's very interesting information. You'll see the significant drops in attendance right before breaks. This is usually when students and families have decided to travel or go out of town before
I think
break.
the high school, though, it was
They
a
were
virus.
Yeah, they all got this illness.
That you can see
Yeah.
the virus wipe out the high school right there on
I
that
did
chart.
notice that. I was just talking about the dips in the elementary and middle, yes, but the high school, I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? I did actually look at the data like 3 times because I wanted to make sure it was right. So I'm glad you're all better. Yes, thank you. So I did put in breaks, though, to add a frame of reference for what might be happening with the dips in attendance. We do like to see that a school like Monument Academy and the culture that you all have here for excellence, I would anticipate, and the leadership team has set goals around having attendance rates closer to 95%. Students can't learn and grow academically if they're not sitting in classrooms. And, granted, they have experiences with their families that are valuable, but they also will benefit from being in front of their teachers. The next slide goes into the goal setting that was established by the Monument Academy leadership team. I think we did it at the end of the summer, beginning of the school year. And these, again, are goals that have been established to occur by the end of the 24-25 school year. You'll see that I've put the fall performance in parentheses. Again, these dips are not necessarily concerning because of what I was saying before with pacing being a problem. Sometimes the students have not even received the information or the instruction around what the NWA MAP test is assessing, but it gives us a way of kind of making sure we're tracking it and keeping it in mind. I stand corrected. The attendance goal for the end of the 24-25 school year is 96%. This next section is, again, something that Ms. McClelland already introduced in her executive director report, but this is detail that lets you all know what the overarching goal is, the individual objectives, and some of the work that's being established. It also gives you the name of the person who is the lead on that objective. So this is all being managed through the RACI model that the leadership team has been working through. And you can see that for each of the major objectives that are established in the strategic plan. Again, this strategic plan is a 3-year plan, and so most of these activities, there are tasks under each one of these sections, and most of them are underway already, but they're just in progress. And Ms. McClelland and I are working to discover a really good way to organize this material, to be able to show you the progress toward it, so that you can track the leadership team's progress toward achieving these goals. That's all I have. Any questions?
I do not, but thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you coming in
see
every
you
quarter or
next
so.
time.
Yep,
Yeah, thank
absolutely,
you.
Mr. Albridge. All right, Board, the next item on the agenda will be the Homeschool Partnership Program. And I believe Ms. Lena Gross will be presenting on this.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm happy to see you all tonight. As you know, Mrs. McClellan and Mrs. Scala are out this evening, so I will be presenting on their behalf. As you know, we did host a town hall for our potential Monument Academy homeschool partnership. That was last week, last Tuesday, January 30th, from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. at West Campus. President Graham was present for that, as many of our staff members were as well. And it was a pretty good turnout, so that was really encouraging. As you probably have seen in this report, the community did provide valuable feedback that we are considering, and we have some considered changes for you all to discuss tonight and potentially move to action on this. So overall, we did have about 18 families that were represented in the initial interest form online, and of those 18 families, we had 11 that were actually able to attend our town hall. We did have one that was not registered, so 12 in all. And as you may have guessed, many of those were current MA families. So we did have about 67% that were current, 33% that were not currently MA families, but they did choose homeschooling last year, many of them did. So it was nice to see some familiar faces that are coming back to MA for this potential partnership. Overall, we do have about 38 current students interested in this program, and that is specifically grades kindergarten through 5th grade. There was much talk about potential part-time high school students coming into our school here to take some part-time classes, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. But it would need, some extra collaboration, of course, with Mr. Kennington and perhaps some of you to kind of get those details worked out. I'm going to just highlight some of the questions and answers and then move to the considered changes. But in terms of the questions from our parents, do they get to choose their curriculum? Yes, they do. That is independent per family. The potential here is to have 1 day a week for their students to come into school at Monument Academy for a day. Those start and end times will be with Carline, but a little bit set off, and we can talk about that in further detail later, should you choose. The overall cost would be a $50 materials fee, which is, we charge $175 this year, for example, for our full-time students at MA. With that $50 materials fee, each family would then receive 250 units or $250 to spend on curriculum of their choice. However, the state of Colorado does deem that that curriculum cannot be religious. And so there are some questions, particularly surrounding that we will get to in a moment as well. In terms of questions that were asked during town hall, just to highlight a few of them, a big one that you may wish to consider: do homeschooled students have priority enrollment if they change to full-time enrollment? And as registrar, I would advise that this is something that does need to be revisited. How would that look in terms of a priority? Specifically, let's say, for example, if a full-time family decides they really want to make this jump to homeschool and it's just not working out for them come August and September, how does that look with them then coming back to full-time, even if a grade level is full at that time, for example? How would we work that enrollment process? So that is something definitely to consider. In terms of how many students we can have in one class, we're looking at 22 students max. I believe, as you heard Mrs. McClellan say last board meeting, that we do need about 25 students for this program to be a go, and 44 would be maximum this coming school year. So that's what we're looking at. Something that was of high interest to these families: can students attend core knowledge days or special school events? And the answer to that was yes. So with that, we are looking at several considered changes. The first would be there was a lot of interest in having one of these days being a full kindergarten through fifth grade day. For example, if a parent had a second grader and a fourth grader, he or she would not want to come on Tuesday for the second grader, on Thursday for the fourth grader. So then could we have one day in which K through 5 is welcome to come? And that's one of the proposed changes. This would impact us with requiring an additional day for the para, which would go from 0.4 to 0.6. That is something to consider. An example of the weekly schedule is there for you, with that Tuesday class being kindergarten through second grade, Wednesday perhaps being K through 5, and then Thursday being third grade through fifth grade. Secondly, they would like to consider updating the class schedule to reflect a more enrichment-focused day, including special and electives collaboration. This was specifically requested by the parents, actually, as Mrs. Scala and Mrs. McClellan were initially looking at some of that curriculum-heavy instruction. On those days, the parents actually asked specifically for electives to be given on those days, so something to consider for sure. Third, of course, as I mentioned before, to explore the option, and this is, of course, after gathering enrollment and course scheduling, to include high school homeschooled students in on-site classes at the high school. For example, they're really looking for a chemistry lab or something of that sort that is just more difficult for them to teach at home or even attend online classes elsewhere. That opportunity is there. From a PPR perspective, we just have to have a 90-hour semester commitment that would be required for those students in order to collect that 0.5 PPR funding, which is definitely something to consider. Next, they are considering having a section of the curriculum library that's dedicated to used items for sale. They are discussing the nature of these items, if they would have to be something that was purchased with the 250 units or not, and they're still working that out. However, money from these purchases could then be used for new items in the curriculum library or classroom supplies. And then next, exploring the option of the school covering the supplies. So items such as binders, papers, pencils, these could be items used to purchase with the educational units that each family receives. I know that several families there, for example, they are already established in their curriculum, which may be religious, and they know that they cannot then use these 250 units to purchase additional curriculum. So the question was raised, could they use that to purchase other materials that they would need for homeschooling if it couldn't be the curriculum that they were choosing? And finally, we would just need to include additional budgeting for registrar, marketing, executive director, and HR time. Are there any questions about those considered changes? Okay. So next steps for you as a board, if you do choose to adopt this, Mrs. McClellan specifically would like for you to consider if there is a shortfall. Would the Board of Directors be willing to allow this to be covered with the West Campus budget for 1 year, meaning the 24 to 25 school year? And if so, how much, and what is the true minimum for feasibility with that decision? Some other items to consider that I'm especially interested in. We do have the letter of interest for homeschool families ready to go tomorrow to be posted online on our enrollment tab should you choose tonight to vote on this. It is high enrollment season, as you know, and so this would be an ideal time to go ahead, and if you should choose to approve this, to get this up and running more quickly than not, let's just say. Something that we would want to consider is, would this program follow our current enrollment priorities, for example? We do have the staff priority followed by the sibling priority, in district, out of district. Is that something that you want to follow, or is this just going to be on a first come, first served basis of interest? Would current MA families have first choice, things like that? And also just to explicitly state whether it would follow our new kindergarten age policy of the August 15th deadline. So those are just some things to consider for your next steps. Some other things that we do need to have created are the handbook, a brochure, a curriculum guide, job descriptions, hiring plan, continue our marketing plan that Mrs. Coleman has done an excellent job of doing already, and also host discussions to include that high school option that I mentioned previously. All in all, this looks like a great option for Monument Academy. Of course, at the bottom of this, if you will see, according to the CDE, this past fall, we were at 171 pupils that are not attached to a homeschool program in Lewis Palmer District 38. That is quite a few that maybe they're just looking for a different program, and we are going to offer something that they are looking for. So we would strongly recommend that you consider that and perhaps move to action tonight.
I have a question. Thank you so much for the presentation and the data. With the 38 students that are currently interested, do you have a sense of how many of those are currently full-time students at MA?
Yes, I would say at least half.
What did you say?
At least half.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. Yes, I did attend that, and I was very pleased with the turnout. My understanding after talking with Mrs. McClellan that she is encouraging us to take action on this tonight to move this forward. Can you speak to any type of timeline? I mean, understanding we're in prime enrollment season right now, we probably need to make a decision on this fairly quickly.
It would be very helpful to do so. We do start seat offers with our full-time enrollment beginning this coming Monday, February 12th. In addition, the choice enrollment application window does close for Lewis Palmer School District tomorrow. So we are right in that, on the end of the sweet spot, if you will, of making some major changes. I did speak with the district today with Leslie Boyce and Jim Taylor, and they too are in the height of enrollment, and so it will take some time for us, example, to get the online registration form up and running, because they actually are the ones that have to produce that for Monument Academy, and we want to give them some grace in that because they are quite busy with their timeline. So in terms of moving forward, Mr. Graham, I would say that certainly if this is approved tonight, we get the letter of interest tomorrow. Families are indicating their interest. We would probably look at the next 2 to 3 weeks in really solidifying enrollment. I do think it's going to come down to us having more discussions about some of these items. For instance, if a family takes that leap and they do give up their full-time seat, which we are asking them to do now by tomorrow, then if between now and the start of school, they don't feel comfortable for whatever reason, their family situation changes, what would that look like for them to re-enter enrollment for full-time at Monument Academy?
Absolutely, and these are great questions. I think the big one that I would like to know, and this would be a question for Mr. Gustafson, is what is our true minimum in regard to if we have to take a loss on this to implement the program for 24-25?
Thank you for asking that question. Before I get to the specific answer, I'm a big believer that we need to invest in order to be successful. Preschool, homeschool, these are programs that feed our enrollment and help sustain us for the long term. In my opinion, we should approve the homeschool program. We should build it into next year's budget. knowing that we may need a year or two, that we have to subsidize that to get it to where we need. We do have adequate cash reserves at the West Campus, which is where the school will be, so we can afford to sustain some modest losses in the first year or two in hopes that we will get to break even within 2 or 3 years and eventually be very successful. So me personally, I'm in full support of the initiative and think it's a great idea.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gross, regarding, I know the letter of interest you stated has been addressed. As we talk about handbook creation, curriculum guide, job descriptions, et cetera, who's going to be responsible to that?
I, would dare say the executive director, so Mrs. McClellan, and likely the program manager, Janice Scala. Certainly, I would be more than happy to consult with them about the enrollment items specifically, but they would be ultimately responsible for the creation of these items.
And without the creation of those items quite yet, would that put us behind in pushing out a letter of interest or requesting a letter of interest from our community?
I think it's a pivotal time for them to express interest because I do believe that, having displayed this has gone out to now all MA families, even if they weren't able to attend this meeting. Perhaps they're interested, perhaps the community is interested. The letter of interest essentially states that, as a family, we are interested in getting on your wait list. So it wouldn't necessarily commit them to anything, but it would be a good starting place then for once we do create these materials to actually send them to those specific families, but also to know as registrars which families are considering homeschool versus full-time enrollment.
Board, any other questions? All right, I would entertain a motion to implement the program, understanding that there would be some items that would still need to be addressed, but we would task, obviously, the executive director and the program manager, I believe Janice Scala, to address that. Would somebody care to make a motion?
I motion that we approve the Monument Academy Homeschool Partnership Program to move forward as presented and proceed with the letter of interest being distributed.
A second.
So Ms. Clinton has made the motion. Ms. Hoyt has seconded that motion. Board, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call the vote. Mrs. Belisle.
Aye.
Mr. Buczkowski.
Aye.
Mr. Carley.
Aye.
Mrs. Clinton.
Aye.
Mrs. Hoyt.
Aye.
Mr. Ross. Aye. Ryan Graham votes aye. That motion carries. Ms. Gross, thank you for all your time on this. This is something that we have been obviously working towards, and I'm very glad to see that we're getting this off the ground. So
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
This item on the agenda is the math curriculum presentation. Ms. Tina Leone.
Good evening, everyone. I have the privilege of presenting a math curriculum adoption report from the Curriculum Committee and represents a lot of work over the last year. And just for reference sake, this is considered the first read for this presentation. I would like to correlate this process with the new curriculum policy because back when we started this whole process, we didn't have a curriculum policy yet. So I just want you to know that we're doing our best in good faith to now follow the policy that the board has passed. I would consider the point that we're at right now to be in phase 3. So if you look at the policy online, in phase 3, number 1 is the Director of Academics will take recommendations to the administration, and we've done that through our curriculum committee. And then based on the judgment of the administration, we present the recommendations to the MA Board of Directors for the first read, which is why I'm here. Why I'm here this evening. Kim asked me to present this as part of the administration, and so this is the first read. The recommended materials will then be made available to the MA community for a 2-week review period, and this is something new for us, and I'm excited about that. community members will have the option to fill out the appropriate curriculum evaluation form, which we did create, and that will be made available. The curriculum will be displayed in the office, and I put it out this morning, so it's all ready to go, because the curriculum review will happen between February 12th and February 23rd. Any parent or community member that decides to fill out a form, that will be included in the packet to come for the board meeting on March 14th. So we're moving forward with that, phase 3. So I want to refer to the report that is in your packet, and I'm just going to step through a few things. You can all read this on your own, but the format for this report was derived from edreports.org. It's a well-known nonprofit curriculum evaluation site, and so we have 4 specific areas that we walked through during this process. We have a prepare section, study, decide, and launch. And I'm looking at page 1. And so as we look at page 1 and we look at the prepare process, within that spectrum, we articulated the purpose and goals for the new materials. We defined parameters for our adoption. We created a timeline and milestones that extend from adoption through launch. All of that is included. Then the next thing to prepare was we developed a school lens, and it took us quite a while as a committee to develop that. That means that we engaged in a shared understanding of why curriculum materials matter, and talked the specifics of that. So our shared understanding is that instructional materials do matter, and they do matter and make a difference for kids. And there's also a little bit of research in there, some educational research about how important curriculum materials are. Then on page 5, we established an instructional vision that described the school's instructional aspirations and articulates what teaching and learning look like in that content area. And then number 3 on page 6, we analyzed why we're in this situation, which is because the Saxon math is no longer going to be offered, so we found ourselves in that position. Number 4, codify our priorities. And number 5, the results of the school lens, and that's on page 7 and 8. And that's a real important document for you to read through, because the teachers are the primary resource for the school lens, and they took a lot of time and a lot of thought and a lot of effort to really put together what they wanted as far as a curriculum. So that was important. Then the next piece is to study. So we put together many choices that were offered by the teachers, and that our initial list is on page 8 and page 9. And then we had to winnow down those choices as part of that process as we investigated the materials. And then eventually, of course, the curriculum committee, we voted and decided on Reveal Math. And then the final piece is, should the board decide to move forward, is the implementation and the launch. And there's just a draft of an implementation checklist for the curriculum. I'd also like to draw attention to the timeline. It's kind of a nice little overview on pages 12 and 13. We started this process way back in October of 2022. And so we just methodically worked our way through gathering the committee and deciding how we wanted to move forward. I really want to recognize the teachers, the MA teachers, because they are the driver behind all of this. And I especially want to recognize Deb Holting and Kate Hines. And Kate is here. So Kate, wave, yes. Yes. She does deserve applause. But we spent a lot of hours together figuring all of this out. And as we go through this timeline, on page 13, I want to summarize by just saying the final vote by the board will be March 14th. depending on how that goes. Just so you know, we want to order some teacher additions if that goes through so that the teachers can have those in their hands before they even leave for the summer. Reveal Math has shared with me a plethora of professional development opportunities that are free. Before we even end the school year, the teachers will have access to that. And you know, we just have a culmination of a timeline to really implement well this program. August 24, we've got in the budget a in-person teacher PD for the full implementation. That's $3,500, that's in the quote. And then we want to have a teacher PD follow-up that would be an online sometime in October and November, so we can just touch base with the teachers to see how it's going. One other thing I just want to mention are, as we were walking through this and trying to figure out, you know, best ways to implement, on page 3, there really are the options and the numbers are there on page 3. Our preference is option 1, that we have a full K-5 implementation this next school year. That cost would be around $42,430.98. And then you would add the $5,000 for the PT. The current budget does allow for that. The current budget is $50,000, so we would actually come in under budget for the full implementation K-5. So that's what we're looking at, and as you read through it, please feel free to email me if you are reading through the document, you have any questions. This is tleone@monumentacademy.net, and thank you for listening and for the privilege of presenting to you this evening. Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you, Ms. Leone. Board, any questions? I know we're not taking any action on this tonight. There's obviously some steps that will be happening over the next few weeks, so.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Can I make a quick comment? I just want to encourage the community that the timeline for the community to come in and look at those materials starts immediately. So I really want to encourage everyone to come in, get your hands on the materials, look at things, formulate questions, and submit feedback. Because the board will be very attentive to those. So please do that. Thank you.
Ms. Belisle, the next item on the agenda will be the Executive Director Hiring Timeline Board. On January 31st, we met and had a lengthy discussion in open session regarding the hiring timeline. And after the HR subcommittee, comprised of Ms. Clinton and myself, met with legal counsel regarding what our requisites are for this hiring, we have produced this timeline and would like to take action on this tonight from the board to make sure that we can proceed forward. We do have some special meetings that would be called between March 4th and April 11th in regard. I would go ahead and open this up to questions for those of you that have had a chance to review the timeline.
So I do have a question on the March 21st. Are you saying that's an special executive board meeting? And I believe we have a work session on the 22nd. Is there any way we could do it on the 22nd instead?
That's an excellent point. I did not know we had a work session on March 22nd.
Let me confirm that. I could have my dates wrong. Actually, no, our work session is February 22nd. I'm looking at the wrong month.
Okay. Yeah, I have February 22nd on my calendar, not March 22nd. Any other questions on this timeline? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the timeline as presented tonight.
I motion that we approve the Monument Academy Executive Director hiring timeline as presented tonight.
Second.
Ms. Clinton has made the motion. Ms. Belisle has seconded. Any further discussion, board? Hearing none, I will call the vote. Ms. Belisle.
Aye.
Mr. Buczkowski. Aye. Mr. Carley. Aye. Ms. Clinton.
Aye.
Ms. Hoyda.
Aye.
Mr. Ross. Aye. Brian Graham votes aye. That motion carries. Thank you, guys. Next item on the agenda is a parental rights policy second read. Let me give some background to the community on this for some of you that have not been tuned in for the last several months. So on November 9th, a first draft policy was introduced to the board and community in open session. At that same meeting, there was board member feedback, and the board decided that we would be willing to receive community feedback on that first draft policy over those next several weeks. By December, the board ended up receiving over a dozen responses. Last month, on January 11th, I shared in open session a revised draft of the parental rights policy where I had incorporated some of the board and community feedback. Those of you that were in attendance last month at the January 11th meeting or have listened to the meeting online heard multiple points of concern and questions that were raised regarding the new revised draft policy that I read aloud. Just to be clear, every board member has full right to rise in support or rise in opposition to what is being presented and discussed. That is part of being on a governing board. And although we may present at times as being unanimously aligned on many issues, that is not always the case. Based on the board discussion last month, I struck 2 items from the policy that's before you tonight. The first is under Procedures 1B, involuntary contact scenarios. Perhaps a student tries out for a sports team of the opposite sex. The second item that was struck is under Procedures 2B, subsequent meeting with student numeral 6. And it reads, "In that other parents may view their child's Fourth Amendment right to privacy as being violated by the actions of a gender transition student, and that by way of board resolution, these parents, guardians, have been encouraged to seek legal counsel." As a reminder to this board, there is nothing that prohibits a board member from motioning to amend the policy further or reintroducing these items that have been struck after the second read version is introduced tonight and moved for adoption. That said, I move that the Monument Academy Board of Directors adopt the following policy titled Parental Rights, policy number JRT, and I will read this aloud. The purpose of this policy is to provide a procedure that informs and partners with parents of minor students who want to identify or express or transition as a gender or some other form of non-binary status that does not align with their biological sex with respect to school records, school policies, and the use of school facilities. Monument Academy MA supports parental rights and the privacy and protection of all students, understanding that a student may seek transitioning to a gender not aligned with their biological sex. MA supports the right of parents to oversee the care, custody, and control of their minor children, especially those minor students wanting to transition to a gender not aligned with their biological sex. Scope. This policy applies when a student communicates or demonstrates to a staff member the student's desire to transition to a different gender with respect to school records, school policies, or use of school facilities. Examples of transition may include a student who wants to express or identify as a different gender, a student who insists on the use of preferred pronouns, a student who wants to use bathroom facilities or follow a dress code or vacillate between bathroom facilities and/or dress code that does not align with the student's biological sex. Definitions. Number 1, adult student means a student 18 years of age or older. Number 2, biological sex means an individual's sex at birth. Number 3, gender expression means an individual's way of reflecting and expressing the individual's gender to the outside world, typically demonstrated through appearance, dress, and behavior per CRS 24-34-3019. Number 4, gender identity means an individual's innate sense of the individual's own gender, which may or may not correspond with the individual's sex assigned at birth per CRS 24-34-30110. Number 5, minor student means a student under the age of 18. Number 6, transition and gender transition mean the process of shifting toward a gender role different from that at birth, which can include social transition, such as new names, pronouns, and clothing, and medical transition, such as hormone therapy or surgery. Number 7, binary is a term used to describe the classification of gender into 2 distinct forms of male and female. Number 8, non-binary is a term used to describe genders that don't fall into one of the 2 categories, male or female. Background. On June 27, 2023, the MA Board passed the resolution regarding the privacy and protection of students as it relates to Colorado Senate Bill 08200 and House Bill 211108, Board Resolution. The Board Resolution directs MA to uphold and support the constitutional right of parents to oversee the care, custody, and control of a child as defined by the United States Supreme Court ruling known as Granville 530 U.S. 57, 2000. The Board Resolution supports the privacy and protection of all students. It mandates that any student under the age of 18 choosing to express or identify as a gender that does not correlate with their biological sex must be affirmed by the student's parental, custodial, or legal guardians. For students age 18 or older, an affirmation by the student's parental, custodial, or legal guardians is not required. The Board Resolution mandates that a student who completes the transition procedures must further transition with a change of name and change of gender in official school records and must conform to the dress code of the gender that they now identify or express with no vacillation. Staff education. All staff shall receive education on this policy. The executive director shall be responsible for administering the staff education, and the executive director shall have full discretion to design and implement the content of the staff education. The executive director's administering of the staff education shall align and support the MA Board's resolution and policies. Procedures. Number 1, staff initial contact with student. A, voluntary contact scenarios. A student could communicate with a staff member in a variety of ways. Perhaps a student could approach a favorite teacher or coach. Perhaps a student could approach a principal or other administrator. All staff should be educated and prepared for these and other contact scenarios. B, involuntary contact scenarios. Perhaps a student intentionally violates the uniform policy by wearing the clothing of the opposite sex. Perhaps a student tries to use a bathroom facility or locker room that does not align with their biological sex. All staff should be educated and prepared for these and other contact scenarios. C, contact demeanor. A staff member should be respectful of and compassionate towards a student who either communicates or demonstrates a behavior that the student is considering gender transition. Coming forward with this communication or demonstrating a behavior is not easy for the student. All staff should be educated on how to receive this communication. Staff should avoid any behavior that could be interpreted as creating a hostile environment. Staff will avoid private or secretive counseling with a student as they are not trained mental health professionals. D, referral to school principal. After receiving the initial contact in accordance with the above or witnessing a student demonstrating any of the aforementioned behaviors, a staff member shall refer the student to the school principal. In addition, the staff member will notify the student that the principal will be in contact with the student regarding this matter. E, follow up with the student. A staff member should not feel like they need to either increase or reduce contact with the student. Rather, the staff member should continue their existing relationship with the student. However, follow up with the student on this specific issue will now default to the school principal. Number 2, school principal. A, initial meeting with student. The school principal, along with an assistant principal, should meet with the student and receive the student with respect and compassion. In the meeting, the principal shall inquire if the student's parents, guardians are aware of the student's desire to transition genders. The principal will further advise the student of the school's commitment to have such decisions affirmed by parents, guardians. The principal will initiate immediate contact with the parents, guardians of said student, requesting that the student and parents, guardians have a conversation with their child regarding the student's desire or intent. The principal will advise the parents, guardians, and student that any further demonstrations from the student will cease pending subsequent meetings with the principal, assistant principal, student, and parents, guardians. The principal shall initiate follow-up contact with the parents, guardians of the students within 48 hours of the initial principal contact to determine if any subsequent meetings will be required or necessitated. In the event parents, guardians advise that no follow-up or subsequent meetings will be required or necessitated, the student will be advised that any further behaviors or demonstrations will be a violation of school policies and prohibited. If the student is an adult student, then no parental guardian notification will be made without permission of the student. B, subsequent meeting with student. If the parents, guardians, and student desire to continue in this process, after having the initial conversation, and the student is a minor student, the school principal with the assistant principal shall schedule a meeting with the minor student and the minor student's parental, custodial, or legal guardians as soon as possible to provide the written list of MA's procedures for the gender transition process and to disclose that the process for a minor student requires parental, custodial, or legal guardian affirmation. For an adult student, the principal is not required to meet with the adult student's parental, custodial, or legal guardians. The written list of MA's procedures for the gender transition process shall include, numeral 1, the steps to complete the process specific to minor students and adult students. Numeral 2, a list of the official school records that must be changed. Numeral 3, a discussion regarding the use of the gender-specific common bathrooms and/or the gender-specific common locker room of the student's biological sex. Numeral 4, the requirement that the student must conform to the dress code of the gender that they now identify or express with no vacillation. And numeral 5, that the appropriate campus community members would receive notification that there may be a student on the campus using the gender-specific common bathrooms and/or the gender-specific common locker room different from the student's biological sex. C, record change. The principal shall accept the necessary executed paperwork to effectuate the change of official school records. For a minor student, the paperwork shall be executed by the minor student and the minor student's parental, custodial, or legal guardians. D, community notice. If the student completes the transition process and requests to use the gender-specific common bathrooms and/or the gender-specific common locker room different from the student's biological sex, in accordance with the board resolution, the principal should notify the appropriate campus community members without violating the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act or other applicable laws. The communication should be carefully tailored to protect the identity and privacy of the student undergoing transition. The communication should be made through Parent Square or the communication platform in use. And there may be a student on the campus using the gender-specific common bathrooms and/or the gender-specific common locker room different from the student's biological sex. E, privacy and protection of all students. Other students who are aware of said transition and/or a student that has transitioned genders through the MA mandated steps for transitioning may request to use a staff bathroom or a single-stall bathroom or request a staff member to monitor the vacancy of a sex-specific common bathroom and the vacancy of a sex-specific common locker room to ensure no student is violating the privacy and protection of another student. F, support of executive director. The executive director shall serve as a resource for the principal and as the principal fulfills the duty under this policy. Legal references, CRS 24-34-301, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA 20 U.S.C. 1232G, 34 CFR Part 99, Granville 530 U.S. 57, 2000. Cross-references, Board Resolution 62723, primary contact, Board President, Executive Director, School Principals.
Second.
We have a second to the motion that is before you. At this time, I would like to extend privilege to our legal counsel, Mr. Brad Miller, to come up and address this body.
Hi, Board. So I'm one of the lawyers for the school, Brad Miller. And Board, I watched a video of your last meeting and some expressions of concern by a board member regarding the legalities of the proposed policy. And while I'm not inclined to want to give you detailed legal advice in a public setting, I think there's a handful of items I need to address. So I appreciate the opportunity here. So the most potentially significant objection raised was the issue of whether student rights should trump parents' rights in education. You were asked to reconsider whether the Granville case is on point in terms of precedent for the proposition that parents are entitled to control the education and life decisions of their children. And here's the truth. We currently live in a society where courts have often sided with the rights of children in multiple instances. Colorado's legislature is seemingly trying to undermine the role of parents or eliminate the role of parents altogether in the lives of their children. So you arguably live in a society where many believe that parental rights no longer exist. And so, you know, the concern is genuine. On the other hand, if there is such a thing as parental rights, the issues that you address in this policy, I think, are central. They're very important. We could look at the trend and somehow concede that we are, as Barack Obama might say, clinging to our children and religion, and that this perceived role of parents is a kind of like a relic of the past. But I'm here to say to you that as a matter of law, even if you're the Rosa Parks of this current age, what you're proposing now isn't that sort of level of direct civil disobedience. It's really not. You're pressing on a genuine question of law, and it's yet to be clarified by our courts. And so what you're doing is not a blatant violation of law. It's a matter of interpretation. Speaking of religion, you might also get accosted with the idea that Romans 13 and other New Testament verses inform you that government's an extension of God's authority and you should be subject to it. I think on the other hand, if you look at Acts and Ephesians and places like that, you'd be reminded that while you're subject to human institutions, you also must obey God rather than men. And so it's on this point that I think the debates become pretty tangled. Whether or not it's a matter of faith, the question that I think you're really wrangling with is whether recent cultural trends, assisted by your legislature, run contrary to human nature, right and wrong, good or evil. The Colorado legislature has placed schools like you in the role of being accessories to a very consequential moral redefinition of individual identity. I was grateful to hear Representative Geithner and LTA express their interest and support in what you're doing. My personal view is that every society that's ever attempted to redefine personhood has failed. This time it's so much more earth-shaking. It's not just categorizing by skin tone or culture or religion. It's about decoupling individuals from their family and from their very being. And the effort's being focused here on kids. So you were asked to look at this from a risk avoidance perspective. As your counsel, I've consistently informed you that the proposed policy will elevate the risk that MA will be sued at some point. It could be that the cost would be significant, or potentially the adoption of the policy would augment your enrollment, and your relatively bold position will encourage various forms of support and money. I think there's factors to be weighed. I don't have a legal basis to assert the cost of the alternative approach, to not adopt a policy or to water it down. But you may want to consider whether a situation could arise in which students and families interpret your acquiescence to the culture as endorsement. If your non-action would also force families to consider whether the risks of public education outweigh the convenience. The other issues raised were that you may need to adopt further policy to address bathroom monitoring and for sports issues. And this may be true to some degree, but I think actually the issue is fully addressed in your policy, and that all that would remain to be considered would fall more under what we think of as administrative regulation. Your school leadership could utilize this policy to address those sorts of issues. There was a concern that your affirmation of a parental right to protect their own child's modesty and privacy under the 14th Amendment is an overreach. And I don't know what will trigger someone's impulse to try to sue you, but the sentiment was already in your resolution, and the policy just reflects that fact. And so I don't think a revision is necessary in that particular instance, and I know that you've pulled it for the current version. So that's basically my legal advice. I will say one thing, though, as a final note. Our legislature right now is considering proposals that would change the law in ways that would directly conflict with this policy. So even adoption here could be short-lived and will need to be reconsidered next year. That's the totality of what I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Would you mind remaining up there for any potential questions that come from the board?
Sure.
All right. So at this point, we had a second. This opens this up to board discussion. So anybody wants to weigh in?
Yes, Board, I would like the opportunity to just make a few points, really for the education of both the board and the community, things to think about concerning adopting this policy, some of which I brought up in the meeting on the 11th. First, I'd like to take a minute to address two misconceptions that are in our community. First, this policy does not prohibit biological males from competing on biological female sports teams. Now, I know that's a significant issue in our community. This does not eliminate that. You need to understand that. Second of all, this policy does not prohibit biological males from using the female restroom. It just provides a process by which biological males can use the female restroom. So I just need to clarify those two things right off the bat. Now I'm going to get into a couple of issues that might serve as like opposition to this policy. And really they boil down to two things, which is how many different battles of parental rights is the school willing to take on, and what is the cost of those battles? Some form of this policy is going to pass at some point, and but it's important to know that each of these rights that you want to defend have a financial cost. So let me start with one that I think is going to impact the school right away. It might be the one that Brad is referring to, and that's that the policy as read tonight conflicts with House Bill 24-1039 if it passes. That bill allows non-legal name changes in schools, including charter schools, where a school must use the preferred name of the student as chosen by the student. So MA's parental rights policy requires any name change of a minor student to be approved by the student's parents. So if the bill
Point of
passes,
privilege. There are usually 650 bills introduced in every legislature. And just because this one seems, pertinent to this doesn't mean that it's likely to pass. And we ought to take that into consideration. That's a bill that hasn't been passed.
yes, and I agree with that. I even said if it passes, and there's a chance that the bill will be amended several times. But the bill as presented in the legislature right now is in direct conflict with this policy. And so possibly one of the first parental rights battles that would create a cost for Monument Academy would be name change. So that's one battle, okay, that is potential, that's foreseeable, let's put it that way. It is foreseeable. Second, so as I described on January 11th, the policy is sort of prejudiced against the voluntary contact student. And so just to quickly summarize, because it's probably hard to remember when you're hearing the policy read what a voluntary contact student is, but it is a student that comes forward to a staff member and says, I would like to, change my name or change my sex by school records. So when a student does that, that student is sent to the principal, and there's a mandatory call that is made home to that student's parents, even if that is against the wishes of the student. And
Respectfully, I'm sorry, Joe, I didn't get a chance to interact with you at the last board meeting. I did watch the video, and you're saying the same things. In this case, we're not going to use a pejorative term like prejudice. That is not an accurate legal term to use in connection with this policy, and that will invade the discussion in an inappropriate way. We need to not use that term.
Well, I think it is fair, though, to say that it can be interpreted as prejudiced. I'm not saying that my view is that it is prejudiced. I'm saying that others will interpret it as
Well, then
prejudiced.
I will say explicitly, it's not the position of the MA board or the school that that's an accurate reflection of the policy.
Okay, and that's fair, because what I'm saying is that there will be opposition that will make that claim. I want to say, but I'm not against, MA in this sort of policy. It aligns with my own personal views as well. The issue is really the financial implications that are going to happen or could happen to the school. After all, if I truly didn't care about MA, I wouldn't have brought up the two issues that were then struck for this reading today and the genuine concern, which Mr. Miller has already alluded to. So first of all, you have this, back to the issue. There's this issue where a student that is merely trying to exercise their right to transition is essentially sort of stifled by the process that we have. And so there is a potential cost there in some sort of legal battle. Another cost that could be there is when the students who's trying to transition, their rights are in conflict with their parents' rights. And I'm just not sure if Monument Academy wants to get into that sort of battle. But you know, Mr. Miller had already referred to that was a genuine concern. So there's a couple others that are out there. One, as far as the staff goes, an enforcement of this policy at the administrative level actually requires the staff, including the teachers, to know the student's biological sex, as well as to make judgment calls on to what is the clothing of the opposite sex. The biological sex is impossible for the teachers to know, but yet we're asking the teachers to enforce that. Furthermore, the policy requires staff to monitor the bathrooms. Although Mr. Miller said that it could be just administrative, I actually disagree, because we would need to answer some questions such as who's going to monitor the bathrooms? How are they going to monitor the bathrooms? When are they going to monitor them? And I don't actually believe that the senior staff has the authority without the board to make those policies on their own. So we have these things that this policy requires. Some policies are basically missing. And it's sort of analogous to a mortgage document. You know, you have a group of documents that all refer to each other as part of one deal. But it's like we're signing the promissory note before the deed of trust or even, you know, the deed itself have even been drafted. So in a way, we're just not ready. I think that if Monument Academy really wants to do this correctly, you'll actually draft out a potential bathroom monitoring policy, as well as further explore this concept that somehow the staff and the teachers are to monitor which students are actually using the bathrooms. So I just don't want to put our staff in a strange situation.
If I could have another point of privilege on that point.
Yeah.
It's routine for boards to trust their highly educated administrators to exercise judgment. And this is reflected best in the expulsions and student discipline policies that you have, and that your staff, through their wisdom, has executed regulations and processes, and they affect those on a daily basis. There's no place for the board to put its incompetent in education world backgrounds into the place of trying to dictate the way a bathroom monitoring system would work. That's not feasible.
So I want to return to the financial implications of all this. Mr. Miller himself just mentioned that the proposed policy will elevate the risk of suit, and that could be costly. And I want Monument Academy, when they actually execute a policy like this one, to really put a lot of thought into it in a manner that will reduce the financial risk as much as possible. And because Monument Academy has a track record of making some very bad financial decisions. Two of them concern this campus that you're in right now. first of all, when the building was built, it was built based on financial projections that were beyond the capacity of the school. Basically, that the finances that were projected for the school were impossible based on the number of classrooms contained in the building. And we as a board have been struggling with that ever since. Second of all, this gymnasium, as beautiful as it is useless for high school and middle school competition. And to fix this is going to cost millions. So what I'm saying is, Monument Academy in the past has made some rash decisions that have had some very serious financial impacts to the school. I just don't want that to happen this time. What I'd like to turn the discussion towards at this point is, if we continue with a policy, then how do we budget for it? Because that's really the issue. There's probably not a way to have a costless parental rights policy. Yet the school, as we identified today, in order to balance its budget, is still approximately, $150,000, $160,000 in the hole. There's no budget for any legal battles on a parental rights policy. So there's a couple ways that we can do this. The first one is actually, will be a little bit surprising. But I think we can consider that the board members that vote in favor of this policy actually agree to indemnify the school for all financial costs. That way, the school can get the policy without financial risk. Another way is for the school to do another fundraising campaign to set aside some sort of reserve for these legal costs, because these legal costs are not currently budgeted by the school right now. So those are two aspects that I'd like the board to discuss at this point. Is
If I can respond, thank you. So, as I said, I hope I said with some clarity, this is not a resolved area of law. That, in other words, it's not clear that just because a preponderance of people in Colorado think that students have the priority in individual rights, that it's been adjudicated and defined in our law. And so it would be equally logical, I suppose, to say that if you don't adopt this policy, those of you who vote against it should indemnify the school for cases that come when a parent says that their rights have been violated. It just is not a logical sequence in a place where there's open law.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Buczkowski, thank you for turning this back over to discussion. I would like to hear from some other board members. I'm going to open this up to some others.
Sure. Thank you. I would like to take a moment to express why I would like to vote in favor of this parental rights policy. I'm deeply invested in this school. I have a great love for the teachers and the staff. I appreciate and respect all that they do to pour into my children during the hours they are in their care. They are, however, not parents to my children. When I drop my children off each day, it's not with the understanding that I've relinquished my rights as a parent or the decision-making authority I have over my minor children when it comes to significant issues. And I would say that unequivocally, alleged confusion over one's gender is a significant issue. I also drop my children off each day with an expectation of safety, and that if there was ever a concern over their safety, I would immediately be notified. There's no beginning or end to my rights over my minor children, and I will gladly be taken to court to argue that if that is what the Lord has planned for me. I'm asked to sign permission slips for field trips, medications, sports participation, behavior issues, notified if there's a slip in grades, a dust-up with another student, concerns regarding a change in mood or physical appearance.
Why then is the issue of gender the one area in which society, in some places government, is trying to tell us that we parents do not have the right to transparent communication? Why are schools being asked to keep secrets and determine what I do and don't need to know as a parent when it comes to something as important as the mental state of my child? I do not want to put our staff in a position where they feel forced to make a decision on matters they know deep down should be made by a parent. In the June resolution and in this policy, we address student safety. I argue that keeping parents informed is keeping students safe. I should be given the benefit of the doubt that I will respond with love and care no matter what the issue is in my child's life. And by keeping me in the know about anything going on with them during the hours of the day that they are not my supervision, I can then partner with the school to address whatever the issue is. I know what conversations to have, behaviors to look for, etc. It is the parent, not the school, that will be by their side at a doctor appointment. It is the parent, not the school, that will be by their side at therapy appointments. It is the parent, not the school, that will sit with them at night and have deep conversations and prayer. It is the parent, not the school, that will love their child through every situation and be there at the end to guide them into adulthood. I wish conversation around a policy like this wasn't necessary, that we could just tell our educators to continue to do an awesome job, focus on the academics, and the rest of the noise wasn't relevant to their jobs. But we live in a time where society is trying to tell us that schools are places to disregard parents. I will firmly stand in opposition to this way of thinking, and any school that my children are enrolled in will have a very clear understanding of where parents fit into the equation. I believe MA does and will continue to, and this policy protects that. This policy tells our parents and staff that transparency is valued here, that a parent's role in their child's life is not questioned, and that this school, no matter what other schools and districts choose to do, will honor the tradition of parent partnership and safety for all students, no matter what. I feel like we have to act now. We are currently in an executive director hiring timeframe. We included in the executive director job description that they will support, enforce, and uphold MA board policies and governing decisions. And I feel that it's imperative this policy is included in that. Thank you.
I'd also like to express my support for this as well. I'm ready tonight to vote to move forward with our parental rights policy. While I understand the risks both for the school and personally, I also ran for this position to protect parental rights and do everything in my power to make sure that our parents have a stake in the matter and that they are informed. I also ran for this position to protect our kids. And having two daughters myself, if I did not support this policy, I couldn't look them in the eye, let alone myself in the mirror. Personally, I think in life, we are given opportunities to show courage and stand up for what is right, no matter the risk, or turn the other cheek in regret. I believe these are one of those opportunities, and I also believe that the sum of these opportunities define our character. And no matter what happens down the road, good or bad, we know all the risks. I want to look back on my life personally, defined by a character that showed courage in the face of adversity, especially when we know we're doing the right thing for our kids. I support this policy 100%, and I appreciate the support from our parent community as well as the board members who are pushing this forward tonight.
Can I jump in? Thanks. As we consider adopting this policy, I want to encourage the board and our community in regards to what I think is the elephant in the room. As we've discussed at length, it is important to count the cost and apply wisdom to this decision. It's important. That being said, we must not let the fear of man drive our decision. It is the fear of God that is the beginning of wisdom, and it is the driving force behind my support for this policy. I believe that the God of the Bible is watching what we are doing here, and when it comes down to what man can do to our school or to us as individuals, I want to make it clear that I fear God more than I fear man. I believe that passing this policy is the right thing to do in order to protect the innocent who do not have a voice and to protect the rights of the parents. I believe it is just one step in a series of many required steps to stand for righteousness. God is watching, and just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he is paying attention to who bows down to the propaganda of fear and who stands for righteousness. Passing this policy is just one step towards the many ways that we need to stand for what is right and protect our kids. Tonight, Mr. McWilliams appropriately pointed out that it has already been 8 months that we've been deliberating this policy. Mr. Miller makes a great point that it is possible that because of the speed in which the legislature is moving forward in developing the laws, we may have to readdress our policy within a year. In my opinion, this is all the more reason to pass this policy tonight. If we continue to wait, then we will be that much more behind. Our community has spoken clearly and has accurately pointed out that we must not compromise in any way because every inch that we surrender will never come back. This policy has my full support, and the time to do it is now.
I prepared some thoughts for tonight as well. I'd like to start out with the statement that girls go to the girls' bathroom and boys go to the boys' bathroom. This is not a radical statement. In fact, only about 3 to 5 years ago, if you told anyone that this statement would be the topic of discussion of a school board meeting, there would have been puzzled looks from almost everyone, regardless of political or ideological leanings. We would have all been baffled as to why something so benign, so obvious, would need to be hashed out by a school board. But what is radical is the legislation we are facing. It's radical not only because it obliterates foundational societal norms and deeply rooted natural law, but it also completely disregards the consent, privacy, and modesty of all students. Let me repeat. Girls go to the girls' bathroom and boys go to the boys' bathroom is not radical. This statement is what this policy seeks to protect and preserve. Again, not radical. I was thinking about some of Joe's comments from the last meeting. They were thought-provoking. And he pointed out that perhaps this policy was trying to be too many things at once. So this got me thinking about what I believe this policy is and what it is not. Again, this policy is not radical. It is not an attack on anyone's lifestyle. It is not an attack on anyone's rights. Instead, I believe this policy is a protection against radical legislation. It is a way to keep and maintain order in our schools. And finally, the policy is a requirement that parents are kept informed of matters that greatly impact their child. And the last part about informing parents is what I'd like to speak to next. I believe one of the goals of this board is to foster a school environment that is parent partnering. We listen to feedback, we strive to make our board operations transparent and communicative, and hopefully, regardless of the issue, whether it be an academic struggle, a behavioral misstep, an ongoing social challenge for a child, a sickness, an injury, a change in curriculum, I hope that we would be a school that seeks to keep parents informed about the things that are impacting their children while they are in the school's care. I'm uncomfortable creating a culture of secrecy from parents, and especially when it comes to something as significant as gender confusion. I believe the best path forward for any child who's struggling with anything is to involve those who care most about that child. Because as well-meaning and wonderful and caring as our staff and teachers are, it's not them that will be walking through those struggles, both day-to-day and long-term with that child, much like Lindsay has already said. It's not admin that'll be driving that child to therapy every week. It's not teachers that will be paying for the therapy the child might need. And it's certainly not the state that will be holding that child's hand and stroking their hair in the middle of the night when things get stressful and sleep is hard to come by. It's parents. Parents should know what's affecting their kids. When it's all said and done, parents are the ones that are both financially and emotionally responsible. It's both our desire and our duty. Our schools should create policy that makes parent notification clear. It's the right thing to do for all children and their parents. And finally, we are a charter school of choice. This policy is one that demonstrates the value in that choice. Families and educators can seek us out if this is an issue that resonates with them. If not, that's okay too. Again, therein lies the beauty of school choice. And with that, I want to express my support of this policy and that I would vote in favor of the current draft. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to take a moment to, I've written out some comments. I'm just going to follow along and read this. It says, coming onto this board 4 years ago, I have volunteered an extraordinary amount of time aiming to protect the rights of parents, along with protecting the innocence, well-being, safety, and privacy of all the children that we have been entrusted to serve. After having a chance to further process last month's January 11th meeting, I'm going to weigh in on some of the presumptions, arguments, concerns, and questions that were presented as opposition to this policy. The first point I want to speak to, the question was raised, what if you have a model student that is sent to the principal, and that student begs the principal to not call dad? The policy mandates that a principal must call dad. It was further stated, and I quote, what has not been researched by the board whatsoever, or any sort of body of law, is the conflict between parent rights and their own child's rights, end quote. As a reminder to this board and community, one of the main overarching support points for the board resolution on June 27th that was adopted with unanimous board support is number 5 on the resolution under the now therefore be it resolved clause. It cites, the board shall direct MA to uphold and support the constitutional right of parents to oversee the care, custody, and control of a child as defined by the United States Supreme Court ruling known as Granville 530 U.S. 57, 2000. And in doing so, will mandate that any student under the age of 18 choosing to express or identify as a gender that does not correlate with their biological sex must be affirmed by the student's parental or custodial or legal guardians, and that these said familial units must be in complete agreement to said affirmation. To impugn this board by saying that this board has not done any research whatsoever is a fallacy, whether intentional or not. The board indeed had privileged and confidential discussion with our legal counsel in executive session around our interpretation of this Supreme Court ruling protecting parental rights. The board did indeed direct myself and another director, along with the school legal counsel, to meet, confer, review, and have further discussion around the proposed resolution before bringing forth a final revision. The board did indeed pass the resolution in open session with our school legal counsel present. Each board member did indeed have full authority and ability to question the merits of said resolution on June 27th and prior if they felt there was not enough research to support the resolution. Let's get back to the hypothetical question with the model student begging the principal to not tell dad. My rhetorical question to everyone sitting on this board, if it was your child, would you want to know? Even if your child had begged the principal, please don't call dad or my mom or whomever the legal guardian may be. It is not the principal's role to intentionally subvert a parent's authority in their minor child's life, nor should we ever put our principals in a position where they are feeling compelled to be deceptive or are being persuaded to keep a secret from a parent by a student. Absolutely not. For if that is what parents want, there are a multitude of schools to choose from where you can abdicate your parental authority, and the school will gladly exploit that. Additionally, beyond legal precedents or a Supreme Court ruling, I would argue that parental rights are God-given natural rights. These are rights that cannot be granted or taken away by any legislative body. These rights are universal, fundamental, and inalienable. It is inconceivable that this board is having to codify steps to protect these God-given natural parental rights here at MA. For we live in an upside-down world where many call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. A second point of concern, and the questions were raised, are these really the battles and opponents that we want to take on? Do we want to fight through our parents and students to get the victory? My response is this. The night that we passed the resolution on June 27th, I stated in my opening remarks, and I said, as most of us are aware, many schools have just entirely laid down and capitulated in this fight because they are not willing to risk legal action and the cancel culture mob that will seek to silence and destroy them. What is even more egregious is that some of these schools are outright embracing, affirming, and perpetuating this narrative without the child's parents ever being made aware. I want our parent community to understand that we are doing everything we can at Monument Academy to protect parental rights, and in doing so are protecting every one of our students, including those that want to express or identify as a different gender than their biological sex. Lastly, let me be explicitly clear that tonight's town hall is not about inciting hatred or harm against any of the students that we have been entrusted to serve. We are not here to wage war against any of our children, but we are here to push firmly back within our legal limits against those that have set their sights on coming after our children. This is what I stated on June 27th, and that still holds true tonight. What do I mean by protecting every one of our students, especially when those with opposing views say or insinuate that the language in this policy is targeting transitioning students, or that it is prejudicial or threatening or creating a hostile environment? Our goal in this is to not alienate families or target any of our students. Our goal is to protect all students, all of them. Gender transition is a very serious choice and often catastrophic to a child's development. Numbers vary from source to source, but data shows that 50% of transgendered minors consider or attempt suicide before their 18th birthdays. This is an extremely serious and grave matter. These are our children, our children. They need to be protected, often from themselves. Any child that wants to pursue a transition needs to have full support at home. This is not anything that should ever be done in secret, and we will not keep this secret from parents here at MA. Monument Academy is here to educate, not indoctrinate our children. We are here to protect the innocence and vulnerability of these precious young minds. We are not here to force, encourage, or promote the sexualization of these children. We are here to teach truth, not lies and deception that may further confuse their young minds. Confusion that may lead to potentially disastrous effects, including mental health disorders, suicide, or the medicalization of our children. There are enough activists, adults in education, mental health professionals, and healthcare workers who are willing to intentionally purport the lie. At MA, we must stand for truth. And whether I sit on this board or not, I will fight to protect my right as a parent to oversee the care, custody, and control of my children. When the victory we are fighting for is about protecting children against those that are intent to bring harm as they advance their political agenda, then I will resolutely and firmly stand in the fray. Board, we are already being ridiculed, mocked, labeled, and threatened. I get it. For some, there is a lot of fear because we all have personal lives, friendships, reputations, and livelihoods. For many, it is easy to bury their heads in the sand, kick the can down the road, hope they never have to face this issue or have to publicly take a stand on this issue, or even worse, just downright lay down to the cancel culture mob in this fight. What I admire most about Monument Academy and this parent community is that we have so many that are immovable, with unshakable convictions when it comes to standing in faith by honoring natural law or God's law and moral truth. These qualities and convictions will help guide us in this fight, knowing there are risks, whether professionally, personally, financially, or all of the above. I continually thank the Lord for the courage, conviction, and resolve of so many of the board members that I have had the privilege of serving alongside over the last 4 years. And I'm asking this board to continue in this fight with me. For we can win, and God willing, we will win this fight, even if we must get tossed in the fire. We have a duty to protect the rights of our parents, the privacy of our students, and all these young minds from the waywardness of this world. As parents and members of this board, I implore you to stand for truth, stand for what is right, and demonstrate the courage to lead. Do we have any further discussion on this policy tonight, Board? Hearing none, then I'm going to call the vote. Mrs. Belisle.
Aye.
Mr. Buchkowski.
Nay.
Mr. Carley.
Aye.
Mrs. Clinton.
Aye.
Mrs. Hoyda.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Ryan Graham votes aye. That motion carries. This policy is approved as presented tonight. All right, that completes our discussion action for this evening. That will lead us into our board comments and announcements. Mr. Ross, would you like to speak to the 2024 Board of Directors election?
Sure. Yeah, just a reminder, we have 2 spots opening up on our board that are currently open for applications for those of you who feel the call to serve in this obviously very important role in our community. So just want to encourage you to do that. And glad to report that as of tonight, I got the first applicant already, so that's great. But certainly want to encourage more people to participate as well. That information is found on Parent Square, where you can fill out the application and it comes straight to me and I'll be in contact with you. So please do so. Is there anything else I need to mention on that?
No, thank you, Mr. Ross. Next will be the February 28th Board Cafe chat with Craig Carley and Karen Hoyda.
Yeah, so just a reminder that on the Parent Square Monument Academy School Board group page, I will post a reminder with the RSVP for that. But it's taking place February 28th. That'll also be in the board highlights as well, so look for that. And then I need some volunteers for March, which I'm happy to be one of. Somebody join me.
I'm happy to join you.
Okay, there we go.
All right, that completes comments, announcements. Any new business calling for next meeting? Hearing none, then we are adjourned. Thank you. We have no citizen comments not pertaining to agenda, so we're dismissed.